Sometimes life gives you challenges you never expected or wanted, like losing a spouse due to death or divorce. Not a situation you can ever prepare for, and it can leave you feeling lost. My next guest had a heartbreaking experience of her own, and it's one she's open about in hopes of helping others who experience it too. Relationship coach Tammy Hill is joining me to share how you can get back in the dating scene after the loss of a spouse. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you.
So thank you for being willing to take on this topic, and it's one I know that is near and dear to you. Can you tell us just a little bit your experience losing a spouse and then remarrying?
You bet. My husband, Mark Mulford, died about 21 years ago. We had 4 children. Our oldest was 15. Our youngest was 4 months old. And he suffered from a massive heart attack really unexpectedly.
In the thick of family life.
Yes. And my whole world rocked, and
yes,
was a single mom for 5 years. It took me a while to be interested in dating again, but once I started dating, I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot.
Probably pretty quickly, right? That's not an easy world to navigate, period, especially after you're still navigating the grief and the loss that comes with a spouse and in the middle of being mom to those 4 kids. What eventually propelled you forward to find the right match and to make that dating situation work?
I love being a wife. I love being a mother, but I have to say I'm passionate about being a wife.
I love hearing you say that.
I do. I love marriage. That's what I teach. I'm a marriage and family therapist and a sex therapist, and this is just all my career and my life. That's so important to me, and I wanted to claim that blessing again.
You remarried 4 or 5 years later.
Yes, 5.
5 years later. And what did ultimately make that successful? Because that's not easy either. As much as you love marriage and as much as you want that in your life, that's a transition. That's a tough transition, I hear.
Yes. My husband, Jeff Hill, is a widower with 8 children. And so when we took this on, we have 12 children together. We had 9 children at home when we were first married.
Wow.
And Jeff and I always have been able to pretty much hold on to each other. The kids make it really hard sometimes.
Sure.
And through the years, we've been together almost 21 years now. And it's really nice to be at the stage we are now versus in the thick of it. So it was, I feel so blessed.
I'm happy for your happiness. And you bring this, you bring a unique perspective to this topic. It's one of personal experience of you, as you shared, and also professional expertise as well. You've boiled it down to 5 things that you'd like people to remember or do as they enter back into the dating scene. And the first is to thrive alone.
Yes. You cannot find happiness with someone else if you're not happy yet. And so a lot of times I feel, especially in the single parent dating world, people are looking for someone to give them happiness, and it just won't work that way. You need to be thriving on your own and doing what you can with your children to thrive alone before you can really attract someone that's thriving alone.
And how do I know I'm thriving, Tammy? I think that's wise advice, and I think anyone would hear that and say, yes, of course, that makes sense in my head and in my heart. Sometimes the self-assessment can be a little tricky, like, am I thriving? Am I ready? Am I there?
I think there's a sense of overarching joy that you're feeling. That's how I felt anyway. It was miserable, so hard and dark for a couple of years, and then we got into the routine. I started feeling like I was strengthened so much, and there came a point where I just felt so lifted and joyful and confident that this was the plan and I'm doing okay.
So you often hear, and I use the word often intentionally, you often hear about people jumping right into a relationship and finding that partnership rather quickly. Is that a mistake?
I don't know that they're all mistakes, but I certainly would not choose to do that. That makes it so difficult for your children, especially.
So time is your friend.
I think time is your friend.
This next piece of advice may be more tactical and practical. You say when you set out to meet someone, you want to choose a neutral location. What do you mean by that?
I think there's safety there, that you meet someone rather than sharing your addresses and having, and the dating is different now than it was when I was dating the first time around, 40 years ago. It's just so different. And so meeting in neutral locations and not giving out landline numbers and making sure that you're safe. There's so much that can be really within a half an hour of meeting someone. You can have a lot of discernment if this is someone that you want to pursue and have a relationship with. And having multiple people come into your home and interact with your children is so confusing to them.
Yeah.
I really think don't bring someone into the home until you really believe this is something that might go somewhere.
So keep some guards up and be smart and use good sense
Yes,
in
absolutely.
terms of what you're sharing. The physicality of the relationship, you say, should move slow too.
Yes, I teach this at BYU all the time, but it's really hard once you've been married and you've had a passionate sexual relationship to all of a sudden not have that anymore.
Sure.
And you long for the touch. You want to be touched. You want to kiss. You want to involve yourself in all of that wonderful part of being human. And so when we give over to that part of the relationship really quickly, we don't think as clearly. We're not seeing things as clearly because that physical touch brings so much emotion up.
It clouds it.
It does. And all of the connection hormones and neurotransmitters within the brain when we are being physical like that, I think go slow.
It's the same advice we would give our teenagers or our kids.
Yes.
Why do we have a hard time embracing that as adults?
Because we think we just can do it all.
Yeah.
But I just know that in therapy that I work a lot of times with blended families, the couples moved in really fast and physical and didn't have a strong foundation of a relationship. You need to learn to know someone and then trust them, rely upon them, commit all before the physical part comes into play.
What are other good boundaries, Tammy, during these dating times or this, redating situation? What are some other boundaries you would encourage people to set?
Well, like setting boundaries around your children.
Yeah.
I really believe is so important. I also think financially, you need to make sure that your finances are your finances, that you're being very careful about if you do choose to go forward and get married, that you have a prenuptial agreement.
You're an advocate of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have resources and assets that have been created for your children, and they need to be preserved for your children. That doesn't need to be something that should split between everyone. Also, I really just think holding on to your own money in your own name is wise. There's too many sad stories where someone's not really been honest and taken money and left people in bad situations.
We've talked about, some of the more practical aspects, staying smart, being sensible. And I'll ask a question I think I know the answer to, but is it worth it? As a lot of women are, listening in, watching in and saying, gosh, I'd love to find love again, but it's hard and it takes bravery and courage. And you talk about the stories we sometimes hear about it. Do you feel like it's worth it in the end?
Yes, I also would say unless you know, and I'm really a spiritual person, unless you have a really spiritual confirmation, this is exactly what you should do, don't do it. It's too hard.
I appreciate that you're acknowledging the challenge of it, right? That you need that that concrete commitment.
I have had to rely on those experiences to stay in the game.
Well, thank you for your candor.
Tough.
Thank you for your candor. Thanks for sharing your experience and your smart advice as well. Where can people get more from you, Tammy?
TammyHill.com. I have a podcast, Live Your Why podcast, and have a new book coming out in January called Replenish. It's one for sexuality and couples.
Fantastic.
So
we'll look forward to
I'm
that.
excited.
Thank you. Congrats on that.